And then this is free will and determinism, and this is looking at the evaluation, where you need to be able to weigh up the pros and cons of each, and kind of discuss whether each of them exists, really. Which is it, free will and determinism? And you need to be able to discuss which is more likely and why, and what supports each point of view. So if we look first of all at determinism and the points that there are to support the idea of determinism, the first thing to say is that determinism is a feature of science. If you think about natural sciences, physics, biology, chemistry, determinism is a really key feature of those, and it's been really successful at helping us to find out about the natural world and understand how it works. So that's a really good thing about determinism. It makes psychology more scientific. The second thing to say is that determinism makes psychology credible. It puts it on an equal footing with the other sciences. If we weren't to employ scientific method and have a determinist point of view of how behaviour works, then we wouldn't be credible. If we just talked about subjective experience and so on, we wouldn't, as a whole, psychology, we would not be credible with the other sciences. The last point to make is that determinism has been really useful. So theories that have been made lead to valuable practical applications. So things like when biological determinism has helped to find the causes of mental illness. For example, biological aspects of depression or so on, other mental illnesses, we're then able to develop SSRIs, as an example, to deal with mental illnesses. And actually, if you weren't determinist and said, oh, there must be something causing this, that's a determinist point of view. It's the opposite of saying, oh, my mental illness must be free will, I must snap out of it. If we take a biologically determinist point of view, we're able to isolate the cause of a mental illness and then develop a treatment. So that's really important. It's been really useful in that way. And then equally, if I give you a different example, environmental determinism, if we're determinists to say, oh, it's these environmental factors that have caused phobias, for example, then we're able, as a result of that, to develop treatments for it. For example, flooding and desensitisation, both of which have been really, really useful and important. So it's important to be, in some cases, deterministic, because it can lead to really valuable practical applications. And then if we look at the flip side, if we look at what the disadvantages of determinism are, the first point to make is that hard determinism is incompatible with the social and legal assumptions of our society about personal responsibility for behaviour. If we believe that all behaviour is caused, it has a cause, then that just doesn't fit with what we assume as a society, that we are personally responsible for our behaviour. How can we ever have a law that says, if you murder, you must go to jail, or in America, get the death penalty or whatever? How can we have a legal system if we think that actually all behaviour is simply caused by various factors? Actually, the legal system at the moment gets around this problem by adopting soft determinism. So where there's been a murder and there's obviously factors that have perhaps constrained free will, such as someone has the warrior gene and they've also suffered childhood abuse, for example, if there's those sorts of circumstances behind it, the legal system is softly deterministic, so they would say that they would give manslaughter rather than murder as a conviction, to allow for the fact that free will may have been constrained in that way, but still allow for the fact that free will operates. So it was still their choice to murder, but their free will was being partly constrained by these factors. So that's a soft determinism approach. So that point about the legal system is really important. It's how we operate as a society, and if we don't believe that in free will, then it's really difficult for us, at least partially, then it's really hard for us to operate as a society. Determinism, the second point, is unfalsifiable. So determinism always assumes that there's a cause for behaviour. Even if we don't know what it is, it's always looking for a cause for behaviour and trying to find what it is. But when one hasn't been found yet, that's not, you can't falsify it. So it would just say that there is a cause, but it hasn't been found yet. So it's not as scientific as it appears. If you're not able to disprove it, then that's a really big problem. Okay, last point, determinist explanations oversimplify complex human behaviour. So in this case, we've talked about this many times. Determinist explanations say that it may be, for example, if you're talking about biological determinism, human behaviour is a complex mental illness is caused by this imbalance of neurotransmitters in the brain. Simple, but actually it may be a combination of that with many other factors, environmental factors and so on. So to say that it's, and a mixture of free will potentially as well, to say that it's something has one cause is oversimplistic. Right, free will then. If we look at the points that we have to support the idea of free will, the first thing to say is that it's got good, as an idea, it's got good face validity. Most of us kind of believe that we, based on our personal experience, we believe that we have free will. Even if we don't necessarily believe in theory, we have the conscious experience of free will where we're making choices. And actually, the second point to make is that this is good for our mental health. If you have what's called an external locus of control, you're more likely to suffer from stress and depression. Locus of control is the idea of what do I think actually controls my life? Do I think it's to do with internal factors? I'm kind of in charge of my own behaviour and destiny, and the things that happen to me are due to things that I've done, and so that would be an internal locus of control. An external locus of control is where you believe that it's mainly external factors that affect your life and what happens to you. So if you fail an exam, you would put it down to the exam being really hard rather than how much revision you did. So those with an external locus of control who think that other things control our life, for example deterministic factors such as biological factors, or those are all things outside our control, those people are more likely to suffer from stress and depression. So it's good to believe in free will. The third point is that a sense of free will gives people a feeling of meaning and purpose in life, which is really important. So that's a humanist point of view. So 3 points there in support of free will. Against free will, obviously the evidence is pretty subjective. Where there is objective evidence, it does contradict the idea of free will. So people have done experiments where they've measured activity in the brain and measured at what point someone is aware that they've made a decision. Because in theory, you should make a decision and then your body should do what it tells you to. But actually, these 2 experiments that I've listed here, Libet found activity in motor areas of the brain before the person had a conscious awareness of the decision to move their finger. So he's asked them to move their finger. It's not, I'm going to make a decision and then then the brain will execute it. It's that the motor area fires before they're aware they've made a decision. So that suggests not free will. The same thing, Chun Seong-soon, activity in the PFC up to 10 seconds before someone was aware of their decision to act. So actually, something is happening biologically behind the scenes before we make our decision to do something, which perhaps again suggests it may be down to biological factors and we just appear to make a decision. We think we're making a decision, but actually our body is making it for us first. The next point to make is that mental disorders contradict the idea of free will because the symptoms are uncontrollable. You can't just tell someone to snap out of depression or OCD or any of these. People really want to, but they're not able to. So that's a really big point against free will. It doesn't mean that those disorders are not potentially caused by free will beforehand. Elements of them may have resulted from free will. It doesn't necessarily mean free will doesn't exist at all, but we're certainly not able to exercise free will to control mental disorders. So that's a really important point to make. And then the last point is that a pure free will approach is incompatible with the assumptions of science. Science assumes a deterministic point of view. If we want psychology to be scientific and credible, we have to take at least a partly determinist point of view, and agree that there are laws of nature that humans follow, and that those are what we're looking for, and that those are determinist.